We've now had Colonel Ruffs in the game for quite some time, and people are starting to unlock him on tier 30 of the Brawl Pass. So today I'm going to take a look at all the various stats we have for every single game that's been played with Colonel Ruffs this season to see what are his best modes and how he's doing right now in the meta. Did he turn out to be a really strong brawler, or is he on the weaker side? And especially with the championship challenge coming up next Saturday, I think it's really important to look at this brawler because as far as I know at the time of recording, he is going to be allowed in that challenge. So you definitely want to stick around until the end just so that you know whether or not it's a good idea to play him in the challenge. So I actually put out a poll on my community tab the other day to ask you guys what you thought of Colonel Ruffs now that you've been able to play him for a bit if you've unlocked the Brawl Pass. And it turns out that most of you thought he was right in the middle, just about balanced. And about a quarter of you thought he was on the stronger side, and then just a few percentage points here and there for the other choices. But generally speaking, according to you guys' opinions, he seems to be between the average and strong area. If you average out like all of these percentages, then on a scale from like 0 to 100, with 100 being the absolute most broken brawler in the game and 0 being the literal worst brawler in the game, he's about right at 57, so the 57th percentile. Now, of course, if you do want to get in on these polls in the future, don't forget to subscribe and join the Sent Squad, so you'll have them pop up in your community feed. But anyway, let's get into these stats for Colonel Ruffs and see how this compares to how you guys generally thought. So for these stats, I mainly used the Brawl Time Ninja website. It has a lot of ways you can filter the data, so I think it makes the overall results you get from it a lot more accurate. But the thing is with new brawlers who have just been released into the game is that their stats tend to be pretty weird. Like, their win rate is always going to be ridiculously high for the first couple weeks when they're out. So if you just look at any individual mode or any individual map, Colonel Ruffs is going to be at the top by win rate on every single thing by a long shot. Like, the win rate is significantly more than everyone else. And the main reason for this is that the people who have him unlocked are like pro players who just gemmed to tier 30, or just people who have the Brawl Pass in general, and those are people who have saved up gems, who have played the game for a long time, and who do their quests daily, so that way they're already at tier 30, which means they're probably pretty good at the game if they practice that much. So the people who are playing Colonel Ruffs is a lot stronger on average than the people who are just playing every single other brawler, which includes the people who are weaker and probably don't have Colonel Ruffs unlocked. So that just basically means whenever Colonel Ruffs is in a game, it's a lot more likely that he's going to win, because it's likely that there's a real good player playing him. So we can't really use his win rate to determine how good he is in this meta, because he's on top in every single mode and every single map. And maybe he could be that good in every single mode and every single map, but we couldn't tell that just from the win rate. Now, if we do just look at a very high trophy range, like if you look at 800 trophies and above, he does start to fall down the ranks a bit, and the win rates start to become a bit more accurate, and not just because everyone up there is already really good. So if you just have really good people playing Colonel Ruffs, then it probably won't make a difference, because if they're playing a different brawler at that trophy range, they're also really good. But there still is that slight effect of win rate inflation, and that amount of inflation depends on the mode, because some modes are more dependent on the brawler and how much damage they can do. Modes like Siege and Heist, where it's a lot about dealing damage. If you pick a brawler that has really low damage, you're going to do extremely poorly in those modes. But for a mode like Brawl Ball, it's easier to win even if you have a really bad brawler, because a lot of that mode can be dependent on how you pass the ball, how you play strategically, which has nothing to do with the brawler's kit. So win rates for worse brawlers overall are probably going to be a bit higher in those modes, which means the win rates for the better brawlers are gonna be on average a bit lower. So everything's sort of clustered closer to that 50% mark. And so that means even if all the win rates for Colonel Ruffs are inflated, they're not inflated by the same amount for each mode. So we can't even compare his win rates across different modes, because that also doesn't really tell us anything. So what we really want to focus on here is pick rate. And the reason for this is because pick rate is a pretty good representation of what people perceive the meta to be. If they think a brawler is good, on average they're gonna play them more. That's just sort of how it works. And if we once again limit what we're looking at to 800 trophies plus, these are going to be generally really good players who know what the meta's like, who know what a good team comp looks like, and so the brawlers they pick are very indicative of what the actual meta is. And now we don't really care too much about just the strict value of what the pick rates are, because that definitely could change, but if we can focus just on the rank of Colonel Ruffs compared to the other brawlers in terms of pick rate, I think this gives the best representation of where he falls in the meta. I think it's gonna just put him slightly lower than where he actually is though, because the pick rate will increase a bit more as more people get him. And so his ranking in terms of pick rate will also slightly increase, I think. But now if we look at this, I'll start from the lowest rankings he has, and that is going to be Heist. He has the 25th highest pick rate of all brawlers for this mode at 800 trophies and up. So that sort of implies that this is probably going to be his worst mode because people who are pretty good at the game are not picking him that much. And then the next lowest mode is Hot Zone, where he ranks 21st out of all of the brawlers. Then close behind is Bouncy, where he ranks 20th. Then Duo Showdown, where he ranks 17th out of all the brawlers. Gem Grab, he ranks 14th out of all the brawlers. Solo Showdown, he ranks 13th, so very close to Gem Grab there. Brawl Ball, he's going to rank 11th. And then finally at the top in Siege is actually his highest ranking, where he ranks 10th out of all the brawlers in terms of his pick rate for that mode. So there are no rankings where he's really high at the top, indicating that he's probably not extremely broken or like one of the best brawlers in the meta right now, which I think you guys kind of realized just by playing him a bit. That's sort of what I got from the poll results that I showed you guys earlier. But I think these rankings sort of give it a bit more precisely and also tell us sort of what his best modes are likely going to be. So Siege at the top there seems like his best mode, or at least what people think his best mode is right now, at least people above 800 trophies. And then Brawl Ball is very close behind, so Siege and Brawl Ball, as well as Solo, Showdown, and Gem Grab are probably going to be his best modes. And then things he's going to do okay in is probably going to be Duos and maybe Bouncy or Hot Zone, and then of course Heist he's going to do the worst at. Just no DPS, and his super does like no damage to the safe, so obviously he's going to be pretty useless in Heist. And like I said, I think these rankings could raise a bit, so he might become an even stronger brawler in the meta as more people get him, and these pick rates might slightly increase. But as of now, I think these rankings pretty accurately indicate where he is. He's definitely in the upper 50% of brawlers in most of the modes. That means he's going to be a pretty good choice, and I think with the right team comps, he can be played pretty well. Now, in terms of using him in the championship challenge this Saturday, I would actually kind of recommend not doing that. Usually you want to play a new brawler in the championship challenge if they're just really good and you can gain that advantage over other teams who may not have that brawler, but I don't think from these results that Colonel Ruffs is so good or so broken that he's really going to give you a significant advantage. And I think it's actually going to be more of a disadvantage simply because no one has had all that much time to play with him yet. You've probably played every single other brawler in the game more than you have played Colonel Ruffs. So I think you're just going to play better overall if you stick with brawlers you're more comfortable with, especially since Colonel Ruffs isn't just absolutely broken and you can't win purely based on his kit alone. And another reason you might play a new brawler in a championship challenge is if it's just really hard to counter them and you can sort of win off of cheesing them that way. But with Colonel Ruffs, he's a pretty laid back brawler since he's more focused on support. So no matter what your opponents play, you're not really going to be able to gain any real significant advantage over them just by playing Colonel Ruffs. So I would recommend against it. And I am going to come out with a full championship challenge guide this Friday to give you guys the best comps to play on every single map. So make sure to subscribe for that if you haven't already. If you want to learn more about Colonel Ruffs' super and his attack and the little tips and tricks on how to use them, I've made other videos on this, so make sure to click on this playlist if you want to watch those videos. I really hope they help you out, but that's all for today, guys, so see you later.